So once you start having features and you're happy with the overall structure and form, then it's time to start popping things. So if I'm going to give another example in painting, just because a lot of people are more familiar with painting and drawing, whenever you're painting, they try to tell you to start with the middle values and then add the lightest lights and the darkest darks at the end. At least that's how I was taught. So sculpture is kind of the same way. Once you start having sort of the overall feel, things are connected, you're happy with it, that's when you get to start making some artistic decisions where you want to really exaggerate some lights and darks. So one of the things that I'm thinking on her that I want to exaggerate is I want to give the sense of eyelashes. Now, I'm never going to literally sculpt eyelashes in on a sculpture, but what I'm going to do is just take a thin, once again, going back to grade school of making your little worm, rolling out the clay, and I'm just going to roll that across the edge of the eyelid just to exaggerate the shadow. And now you'll see lots of people that will go in and scratch some texture in there or things like that. You can do that. But for me, I just want some extra, a darker ledge. And then I'm going to put that ledge all the way to the corner just so it feels like it goes right there. And that just gives us a little bit more punch around that eye. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to define that eyebrow, just because if I give it a little bit harder edge, it'll make it feel more like it's a different value. So I'm just going to pop it just a little bit, just things like that. And then I'm actually going to soften the upper edge of the eyebrow, blend it in more so it feels like the hair is growing out of the skull. So those are just a couple things. I'm going to start to describe that wing of the nostril a little bit stronger, just to give a little bit more color. And then I'm going to actually go in and just give, you don't want to, especially on something this scale, you don't want to go in there and really hollow out a deep hole in the nostril. You want to just sort of, all you need is just to cast a little bit of shadow. So that's all I did there. I just dug out a little bit. I'm going to fill in. It's getting a little dark right at that last turn, so I'm just going to roll that in. Soften that transition. Okay, so just a few things, just eyebrow, eye, nostril, just to add some variation in value. Same thing with the hair. I want to add, I'm going to let it get a little bit more lost at this edge of the head. And then I'm going to have it cast more of a shadow here. I'm going to blend it a little bit more there. So again, going back, accentuating these bony areas, dark area. Take some of that noise down. Softening that. Okay, the next place where I'm going to have a little bit more value is right here in the corner of the mouth. So first thing I'm going to do is just describe that, where I really want that corner. And then I'm going to dig up for the upper lip and let that round around there. And then pull that bottom lip just around there. Just real subtle. And then I'm going to let that little pod of flesh right there just round it up. So this fleshy corner of past the corner of the mouth, this shape is kind of caused by where all those muscles come together. I think it's called the buccinator. And that just kind of wraps around in there. So just some real subtle things. You can see from one side to the other where there's not as much popping. And then you come on this side and just see what adding sort of a sense of an eyelash, a nostril, a little bit more definition to the, I may want that, I'm going to put a little bit more that corner of the lips. So, and then I'm going to soften. And then you can also, the same way that you can add some darks, you can add some lights by softening the transitions of some of the forms. So this wing of the nostril is a little strong. So I'm going to soften that form so it's not so it didn't go in so deep right here where it meets the head. So I'm just going to soften that transition. Just real simple stuff. And it's easy to do if your architecture and structure are strong. Then you're just making little subtle changes. And then sculpting's fun. Now, one other thing that I may want to do is I'm looking at the side and my eye's getting drawn too much into the ear and things like that. So I may make that hole, exaggerate the shallowness of the hole, or I'm going to find ways to bring the eye to the front. So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to come forward. Let's have you face me, Justin. And I'm going to just put a little bit of hollow in her eye. She's got lighter color eyes, so I don't want to dig too deep. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw that iris just real gently. Just real shallow. And I'm looking at it right now. I don't like how she's looking straight on, so I'm going to have her look to the side. And that's one thing you'll notice when you're drawing. If you want to add some more, or sculpting, if you want to add some life to your piece, don't make it look like a zombie just gazing straight forward. Just turning the eyes out a little bit will look nice. So I'm going to turn that to the side, see what that looks like. And that's still not enough, so I'm going to dig in there a little bit and just hollow that out. And I'm not going to dig in there deep right from the get-go. I'm just going to take a little bit out at a time. You can always add more, or you can always take out more. It's harder to add stuff back in there. And I'm going to turn that to the side, and yeah, that gives a little bit more. A little more depth. I'm just going to add a little bit of a highlight. You saw what I did. I just kind of moved that clay around, and the extra residue of clay that was in the side there, I just let that kind of bunch up and become the highlight of the eye. Now, I try to do real simple things with eyes because you could sit here and tickle and fiddle with this thing forever. And at this point, I am finally going to add just a little bit. Now that I have the iris hollowed out, I'm going to add just the most subtle of lower eyelids. And I'm just going to bring, instead of the big, thick eyelid that we added yesterday, I'm just going to take kind of a line. And it's not to add a big shape. More than anything, it's just to add a straight line on the underside of that iris. Because what that does is it gives sort of the sense of where that iris gets kind of chopped or leveled off by the under eyelid. And she's got, her lower eyelid is so subtle that I'm just going to fill in so it doesn't leave a shadow cast under there. I'm just going to keep it real smooth transition from that eyeball to the cheekbone, just a nice little stretch of flesh. And then once I'm happy with that, I'm just going to come in with a little tool and just take out some of that noise. So where the clay is just kind of built up or kind of messy, I'm just going to smooth that out a little bit. Not smoothing it out like with the sense of it needs to be smooth, but just taking out where the clay is bunched up a little bit. And just so it's a nice, clean line. And now, when you're dealing with a tear duct, one thing to always remember is don't let that tear duct go deep inside. The tear duct actually comes back out towards the nose. So I'm going to take just a little bit of clay in here and fill in and let this tear duct come back out towards the nose. Again, just taking some of that noise away, making sure I have that nice almond shape feel. And this is something that, and this is just, I'm not trying to mimic exactly what's in front of me. I'm trying to take certain features that I like. And I've really exaggerated this distance here just because I've elongated everything and I just like what's going on. But this is, like I said, this is when you get to create artwork instead of just, we'll do portraiture, accurate portraiture in another class, but. I'm going to talk a little bit about lips. And lips are as complicated or as simple as you want to make them. So I like to choose simple. So whenever I'm sculpting lips, I like to start, when I'm happy with the plane and the profile, I'll give it a little bit more dynamic sense. I always like to start, you always have a starting point, your structure point, and mine is just that midline of that lower lip, because usually that's the split of the two halves of the lower lip. It's in two pieces. There's a pad on this side and there's a pad on this side. And the upper lip is determined by where that center line of the lower lip is, because it sort of creates this M shape. So it has three pads. It has this middle roundness that usually has this little bit of dip that fits into the middle of the lower lip. And then the M comes down toward the corner of the mouth. It usually turns back up right at the corner. So just really easy. Just little things you don't have to fuss too much about. Okay. And give a little ledge to that lower lip. And avoid the tendency of doing a real hard line, because there is that color separation, like I said, because of all the blood vessels in the lips. They're very red and warm. So you want to avoid that tendency of making this like hard shadow cast underneath. You want to just keep it nice and subtle. Okay. Now the top part of the upper lip, that divot that comes right from the nose, you just want that sort of depression. This is one of the few times where you'll sculpt a concave, where you come in there and kind of remove, and then let that once again fold over. And the one thing I see a lot, one of the biggest mistakes I see with this shape in here, this sort of tear shape, is a lot of people leave a hard line. You want to make sure that that's just a real subtle transition. And I'll come in with an evening tool that just kind of evens out these big shapes. Make sure there's this nice undulation of that upper lip. So like I said, it doesn't take much, just real simple. And anytime you start getting lost again, you just go back to that middle line and tell yourself, okay, do I need to add more? Do I need to accentuate that separation?